All right. So
It has to be a masculine voice, remember.
you should be a truck driver. This episode is sponsored by truck driving in the US of A.
Assalamu alaikum everybody, welcome back to The Tribe. This is podcast number 2. My name is Muhammad Hilal.
My name is Muhammad Zain.
And my name is Abdurrahman Badawi.
So what are we discussing today, Sheikh?
So today's topic is future-proof jobs. Yes.
Yeah, overall this will be pretty much a discussion of what we could expect in the future from traditional jobs as well as up and coming careers, and also the transitions that are going to be taking place just in general for people and how they're going to be working and making money.
Well, also like the importance of like having a diverse set of jobs within just even the Muslim community. Everyone's always pushed towards being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, but it's important to have, film directors and interior designers, and there's definitely an element that Muslims over the course of history have brought very, very unique perspectives to these areas, especially of jobs. So why not also have that discussion? That's a very
that's a solid one, yeah. I thought you were gonna say diversity in a person, his own skill set, which is another conversation we should have today. But I like what you're saying. So we've and that even ties into the concept of future-proofing a job or getting a future-proof job, because in our parents' generation, those avenues that you mentioned were the safe bets by far.
Zero risk.
Zero risk tolerance, right? And it worked for them, and it's what they needed to do to survive. Now the landscape has changed so drastically, not just because the world has changed, but because many of us are children of immigrants. The three of us are, and they've transported to thousands of miles away, different environment, different culture. Yeah. So all that plays a role. And then of course the exponential rise and growth of the technology, the internet, and so on. So of course before we begin, we begin in the name of Allah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In the name of Allah we begin. Our praise and our thanks belong to Him, and we ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger Muhammad. Bismillah. All right. So yes, let me start by defining the concept of a future-proof job, right? The future-proof jobs are, as simple as possible, career paths that are likely to remain in demand in the future. So I don't know if I'm going to be looking at the camera or about you guys. I'll do a little mix and match.
We gotta
here and there.
do a little back and forth.
We could do back and forth. It's not like I'm not going to start.
Look at each other.
Yeah.
We could look at each other.
I feel like it'd be like they feel awkward from.
It doesn't matter what they feel. I mean, I'm not gonna get into
it. I'm not gonna care. We don't care about.
Oh, you're on board.
Yeah, I'm fully on.
All right, let's do it. All right,
I'll hold you back.
It's cool that we let the conversation flow freely, because now we have like a nice behind the scenes sort of segment.
Oh, okay.
That's true. All right.
We still don't care about our audience.
Well, don't say it out loud. You have to hint towards it.
Okay, so defining future-proof job.
Yes, a career path that is likely to remain in demand in the future. That's the simplest. I mean, I looked up, there was all kinds of definitions or understandings, but that's simply like, I want a career, or for my kids or for myself and my family and others, I want a career that I can rely on. If I'm going to put in 6 years of college or X years of effort or training or whatever the case may be, and money, time, youth, then I need to have some sort of confirmation. There's no guarantees in life, right? But I want to have some sort of confidence, reassurance that, okay, now this investment of 6 years and X number of dollars and X number of hours and the years that I can afford to work it, now it's going to pay off.
How long would you think is a good expectation of a job to last? So like, for example, I'm getting this job and I'm expecting that there's going to be a high demand in this industry for the next, let's say, 10, 20, 30 years. What do you think that number is?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know that there's a hard number. It depends on how much effort you've put in. Let's talk about where people typically expect, and then we'll go from there, right? I mean, people typically expect.
Maybe you have to look at it differently. Maybe it's not how long the job or the career is going to last. Maybe it's like, with this job, will I be able to transition out of it into a higher position somewhere else? So sometimes, for example,
evolve,
adapt. Let's say like the tech jobs, right?
Yeah.
If you get into tech, and you start off just as someone as a programmer, you take some managing courses, you go up the ladder, right? Now you're, the CFO of maybe a company, and then later on down the line, you don't know where that takes you, but you're able to still use that expertise and that transition, because we're still going to need to continue using technology to build.
Well, on that note, I don't believe that there are any. Correct me, but I don't believe there's any jobs out there or skills, even if they're referred to, and I don't like unskilled labor, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe there's anything out there that you can't build on. So for example,
How do you mean? Yeah.
so if that sector of the world starts to become obsolete, and you have the writing on the wall, there's warning signs that you're gonna, this job is getting less and less and paying less and less, and the government is phasing it out. For example, like coal mining or any of those things, right? Now you've built that skill set, and not everybody's just strictly a coal miner. Like the coal mining industry, everyone's doing just 20 different jobs or whatever, right? There's no way that those guys are, because this was a big stink with Obama, and he, they were closing down coal mines because of
trying to move to a cleaner energy source.
Yeah, renewable energy and so on. And one of the things that that they did back then was that they offered either was free or was subsidized sort of training to transition to solar and wind energy and so on. A lot of people took it, and khalas, others got really pissed off and said, no, this is all I've known all my life. And it makes you really think, where's the, going back to the main point, which is that I don't believe there are any skills and talents and things that you've built over years that are like, oh, I can never use this ever again anywhere. No, you need to have some responsibility for yourself as well. And while you're in whatever field you're in, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the person who operated helicopters or took video footage when they do scenery in the movies, cinematography and whatnot, that guy was chilling. Lord of the Rings, you see the cinematography in there. So in some scenes you could see the helicopter shadow in the corner. they had to digitally alter it, but that was a hard job, man.
Whereas now you have drones and stuff like that.
That job is completely obsolete. I'm sure maybe one out of every 50.
Or even that reminds me of something taking expertise from one area and applying it to another career.
Always.
So it could be something like, for example, aviation, right? Mm-hmm. When the reason we have aviation in the first place is because they bring these wildlife experts sometimes who look at birds, right? People who just study birds, and they're able to use their expertise in that field and their understanding of how a bird, the physiology of a bird and how it functions, how it remains in the air, to apply it to
airplanes
and so you're literally taking someone who's from a completely different, and that's why all these big corporations, they have freelance consultants and analysts and things like that, because they bring expertise from another area, from another field, and they try to apply that framework or that idea to different. So I
think, but on that note, is that it's still your responsibility. Let's say you land a great job. So we were talking earlier about the cybersecurity boom. Mashallah, I was Googling earlier, it's expected to rise. There's millions of jobs available, and there's still a deficit in, what's the word, deficit? Or is there's more demand than the people filling the jobs.
Don't ask me, man, I'm unemployed.
so there's more of a demand than the people are able to meet currently. That doesn't always speak for the future, but that's the current setup, right? So if a person lands, and typically, whenever these things happen and there's a big boom in an industry, I've seen it a few times, the gold rushes, right? You had, graphic design, you had the .com bubble, and the sort of then you had the crypto world, which is still, has its ups and downs, and the metaverse now, which you had referenced a while back.
During COVID, you need nurses, teachers, PAs, all these different careers that were booming COVID.
I want to, nurses, PAs, and teachers and whatever, those are such resilient jobs that have such a human touch, which I think we'll get to in a second, about which jobs are expected to be future proof. And nurses are right up there, because it's one of the categories is a job that has such a human element that it would be very difficult. We can't envision in the next 20 years or 30 a robot replacing it. That's one of the categories of future-proof jobs.
Absolutely. Definitely, what I'm getting at from what you guys are saying is there are a lot of things that are going to be transitioning over to digital, as we've seen in the past, what I mean? Things that are either automated or taken over and operated by robots, but things such as the practice of medicine, for example, that's what you can guarantee will always have a human touch, which is, I believe, the same reason that even our parents would want us to go into medicine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the, I don't know if that was their initial motivation. It is a very prestigious and honorable, especially culturally speaking, but I think especially the idea of a doctor, for example, when you have this sort of conversation, it's not about the benefits that you can bring as a doctor. There's a very cultural look to it. But if we're talking about it from a career, just purely a career point of view, even doctors themselves are the way they practice medicine is gonna change over the next few years. So, for example, there's these robotic surgery arms that people, I think they were looking into it, where the doctor, for example, is in let's say Wisconsin, right, and he's doing surgery on someone in Massachusetts, using this robotic arm that's reflecting the exact
precision of his
down to the millimeter.
Yeah, so even these professions that we consider foolproof, they're foolproof. Yes, their human element remains, but the way they're practiced, what is going to be the skill set of a doctor, perhaps maybe just it widens the bandwidth that he needs to be able to cover.
He needs to now be trained in dealing with robot arms.
Exactly, or I don't know. I can't think of other ideas at the moment. But
it might mean that now, because the robot element aids, and of course the robot element will be programmed, and it will probably have a margin where it corrects errors like automated cars now, or a Tesla, or a lot of cars where they're going to assist you to remain in your lane. You still need the driver so far for now, but this thing took out some error that a human can make. I'm assuming those robot arms, the doctor is going to be like, if he's about to make a mistake, it's going to alert him. Like, are you sure you want to cut that thing off?
Do we need the kidney?
that's alert. That's a kidney. Press X to cancel, and that's going to happen for sure. I'm like, what? That's a value add that I can see them bringing.
Just so all the doctors are watching us. This is very simplistic, obviously, conversation.
Sure.
And that's before anyone gets I don't want to get canceled. But it's only the second episode.
Come on, man. You gotta
we don't care what they think. You
gotta get canceled eventually. Just accept it.
You know what? You're right.
Be one with it.
It's a different feeling, right?
Yes. I think you had talked about this before we even began this, which is that to make sure that we keep in mind we are Muslims, alhamdulillah, we believe in Allah, and we when you talk about something like future-proofing something, you can never be fully certain about the future. You're not certain about 1 minute from now, let alone a year, let alone a decade or two or three, right? So, alhamdulillah, the formula for us as believers is tawakkul ala Allah, right? Trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can be the person with the least future-proof job in the world, the one that's expected to be replaced tomorrow, and Allah keeps you floating and keeps you just serving because that's how He will subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you could be the person who's, there's been kings in history who were the most protected people on the planet, and they got usurped or backstabbed, or they lost everything overnight, or health problem, right? There's no such thing as I've fully foolproofed or future-proofed my life. However, the second ingredient of tawakkul is, what is it, the hadith, right? Trust in Allah and tie your camel. For those who are unfamiliar with the story, the Sahabi, the companion, came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said he was coming to pray at the mosque, and he's like, he was new to Islam and he's figuring out the concept of trusting in Allah. So he said, well, I usually would tie my camel when I come to the mosque. I'll tie it on a post. He's like, but now I've been told to believe in trusting in God. So does that mean I don't tie my camel anymore? Because God will protect me. Like, how would He let anything happen to my camel while I'm in the masjid? But the Prophet ﷺ said, no, that's a misunderstanding. No, trust in God, but tie your camel.
Mm-hmm. So do your part first, basically.
Yeah, like you can't now say like, all right, in that case, just sleep on the ground and say rizq will fall on me like the rain. Doesn't make any sense. So also, when you tie your camel, or when you lock the car's doors, or when you go down a career path that's future-proof or whatever, you've done your part, and things can still go wrong. So you still need that element of tawakkul and trust in God. Is like, oh Allah, I've done my part. Please take care of. Make sure things work out for me in all of the factors I can't control.
Yeah, what you just said reminded me of something, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but something I heard like one of the shuyukh mention is that the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the nation of Muhammad, since its birth, since the forecoming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has been an ummah that you have to do the work first, and then you get the reward, as opposed to the past, for example, nation. So, for example, Musa alayhi salam, all he had to do was hit the sea, the sea splits. Mm-hmm. Like the miracles that these ummahs were given were just like, all you have to do is believe, and we got you from there. For us, it's like you put in the work. You have to travel from Mecca, leave your home, go from Mecca to Medina, struggle against Quraysh, go back to the concept of consistently doing the work, struggling. Mm-hmm. We see it as a trend even with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This was a nice observation for me that sort of clicked. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these past nations, He would give them everything and say, just walk the path. For us, it's different. He said, like, you do the work and walk the path, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take you there one way or another. You have to build. But you have to build.
That's a good point. Even with the accessibility that we're given today, there's still always an aspect of your touch. Without you actually being the catalyst of whatever you're trying to achieve, you're not going to get anywhere, despite all the tools and the easy access to stuff that we have now.
Isn't it interesting? Is that what you just said, like if you were to go back 100 years and explain to your great grandfather the amount of access you have today, he'll be like, there's no way you could ever fail in that life. If you fail in that lifestyle, you're a complete bozo.
Absolutely.
And if how could you ever be depressed? How could you ever be unhappy or unable to succeed with all your opportunities? And subhanAllah, humans are humans and nature is nature. Like human nature is the same wherever you go.
So given the equation that you just mentioned earlier about tawakkul on Allah and then also doing your part and leaving the rest up to Allah, of course, what exactly are some careers that we can expect to be future-proof, whether it be having to do with direct physical labor, whether it has to do with computer work or some sort of digital work where you're collaborating with others? What kind of careers can we actually expect to see in the future?
Great question. I mean, I came across in my research 3 categories. So we can start naming like specific jobs, and for anybody out there who's looking, Google just future-proof careers, future-proof jobs. A bunch of websites there's gonna be a lot of overlap. And there's going to be some who are, some of them are speculation and saying, well, I think this market is booming, metaverse and AI or whatever. They have a solid reason to expect that. One of the fastest growing careers in the U.S. today is solar technician, solar engineer, solar in general.
Yes.
If you Google that, it's top 3 of fastest growing careers. So I mean, the sun is there, and the sun, inshallah, is not going anywhere. So the expectation is that it's just going to get a lot more efficient and better, and we need it. Like, there's a desperate need, so it's adding up. But keep in mind
that you say renewable energy in general, or specifically solar?
No, renewable energy.
I think in general, yeah.
Renewable energy.
Yeah, sun is quite reliable, I think, compared, depending on which region of the world you're in. Like you go to Arizona or somewhere where it's desert, you go to Saudi Arabia or Morocco. Morocco, if I'm not mistaken, has the biggest solar power plant in the world.
Really?
And Riyadh, I think, is building maybe number 2.
Mashallah.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, I mean, look, they got sun for days, like endless sun out there.
The problem with all these jobs, I think, is that they're affected by the political climate of the country. So like if you have Obama at the helm, right? He's saying, oh, we're moving towards renewable energy. Trump was sort of backtracking on those policies. Biden is taking it the other way. God knows, Allah knows who the next guy, what he's going to do. So I feel that that's the only problem with those jobs. Like, they're tied to a political climate. And
so it requires funding, it requires grants.
Exactly.
So it might be the next president, and now you get a bunch of, hey, all the grants are pulled, and we got to lay off 30,000 people.
Kanye 2024, you know.
Kanye, if you're listening,
please sponsor this.
Please sponsor the solar job. That's really interesting, because only in these Western democracies, or these the democracy countries where you have a complete opposite shift, when it's usually a back and forth, right? You got the Democrats at the one time, they get the Republicans. That's usually how it's been. Rarely, occasionally you get your 2 terms in a row, but then it goes straight back. So, in countries, I thought you were going to say the political climate of, for example, these oil-rich countries, because they also are sun-rich, and they also should be investing heavily in solar because it's going to make them powerful. But the gravy's coming in, the oil is coming in. I mean, now it's slowed down significantly. But as long as the oil was coming in by the trillions, they're like, why should we shoot ourselves in the foot? And so that's another conversation.
So even with those countries, we're seeing a big shift for them in terms of where they can rely on their income to come from.
There should be a big shift.
It has happened. It has started.
Some of them don't have the vision.
Yeah, a lot of them don't have the vision, but
we want to be banned from many countries. Yeah. Be careful.
They don't have the vision, but they're either starting it now. I don't know if they truly have embraced the vision, but they have embraced the work. The work has started, and the biggest power solar plants here and there and the other. You can Google them. They've already started building, and some of them are.
I'm still surprised by the Morocco one. I absolutely did not know that.
Yeah, I remember. I assumed when I was living in Saudi, I was a bit biased. I assumed it would be in Saudi Arabia. They have desert as far as the eye can see, and the sun never stops over there. But no, it was Morocco.
Actually, with that amount of sunlight in space, I was watching this interview by Elon Musk. He said that you could take a corner out of Utah, which is, I believe he said something like 50 miles. You know what I mean? Just 50 miles of plain land, and you fill that up with solar panels, you could power the entire United States.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's insane.
And then the sun itself, I saw this in a documentary yesterday on Netflix. The sun in 1 hour puts out enough energy towards the Earth to power it for an entire year. So the entire Earth's worth of energy usage in 1 year, we could get that from 1 hour of direct consumption of the sun's energy in 1 hour.
Wow. That's insane. And
so the resources
you can apply that everywhere.
And I think, especially
that ties back to the idea of using people from different different fields and different expertise, and applying those fields So for example,
100%.
applying someone who obviously for this sort of work you'd need, I don't know, someone who studies the sun. Were you an astronomer? Or?
Solarist.
I don't know.
Solarist. What are you gonna do?
You would need to be a solarist. Or,
Yeah.
I don't
Some
know.
sort of astrophysicist.
Someone, astrophysicist, and
Sure.
you would need to apply that somewhere in like some tech, and you need to bring
No, it's a whole field,
fusion,
and maintaining it and
experts.
improving it, and like even the technician who installs it, it's an entire industry.
It
By the
will
way,
definitely be a reality as we continue to advance and get the technology to do these kind of things.
also, well, that's so we can. I mean, this might be a conversation for another time. Is like the powers. So some of the largest industries in the world now are dependent on us not them losing the power, the oil, big oil, and whatever. So that's why there's a lot of resistance and these kind of things. I just want to correct something though. When I had Googled it years ago, it was Morocco. It's no longer the biggest in the world. There's 3 bigger than it now. India, China, and India, and Morocco's number 4.
Okay. We still we top 5.
We top 5.
That kind of makes sense. India and China's population is like
Insane. Dude.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, largest solar farms in the world. I really hope that a lot of Muslim countries are Middle Eastern, and a lot of them have desert as far as I can see, and they have insane, wealth, right, from oil, etc. And I really hope that they catch up in the solar race.
Catch up. I hope that they lead it. Like we're the ones with the most sun.
Yeah.
And we literally have the Sahara Desert, all the
I mean, like
access. We have the space.
As far as I can see, yeah, the sun's there for longer, and it's sharper than anywhere else in the world for the most part. So
yeah, and plus nobody's really using it.
Yeah, literally, Saudi Arabia has an area called Al-Rub' al-Khali, which is the empty quarter. A quarter of Saudi Arabia, roughly, plus minus, is just empty desert. That's unlivable, unhospitable conditions. So hopefully that, they are building, I do know that. So hopefully.
So what else can we expect to be future
So
proof other than solar?
if we focus on, let's do the strategies. That way, whoever's listening or whoever wants to focus on this. Well, before that, can we just answer who should be concerned with this? Then we'll get right to the strategies. Because you might be listening thinking, like, who cares? Like, I got a career or I have a job in cybersecurity, I make 80K. So, so who should be concerned with this?
Number one, I'd say definitely the average college student. I know even like speaking from personal experience and a lot of my friends, it's the same story over and over again. I'm a student in college. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what's future proof. I don't know how to keep my family happy, but at the same time do something that makes me happy. And so I'm kind of looking around, wondering what the best career to get into is. So college students are definitely one of them. What do you think would be another person that's concerned with this?
I think again, it's people who are. So we talked about risk and we talked about college students. That's like the perfect time to be taking the risks, right? You're not tied down. You're not tied down per se to a family. You're allowed to sort of explore these different areas.
So long as you're not
responsibilities are lower, stakes are a bit lower.
I think number 2 would be people who are in jobs who they visibly they see that their jobs have no future.
Oh,
so like and you're stuck because this is what you've been doing for upwards 15 years.
Well, I hesitate with the word stuck because a lot of people feel bad, and then they just wallow in that depression or like that negativity for years, right? I'm at risk of any time I get laid off. This might be the last one, and I'm done for. And I've had experiences with people who have the savings and have the ability to pivot, and they're held back by anxiety and fear and like comfort. Like it's not even it's comfort level, right, or comfort zone of like, but this is what I've known, and they're completely capable. Their brains are sharp. Their ability is there. Like they check all the boxes of ability to pivot or ability to build on what they have, and they stay there for years, 5, 6, 7 years. And they're young. Some people that I deal with. That's why I'm like, it's frustrating. I don't like to use like, and I'm like, hey, you can pivot. I've dealt with people. I had a good friend in Mecca who was Canadian, and he had graduated from college with some degree, and he was working in Toronto and didn't like it. So he went online, Googled, did the homework they had to do. He was a young man in his 20s, and he paid up the cash. It was $15K or something to go pick up at the time a radiology technician. He did, and then he had no idea that he'd end up working in Mecca at some point. He ended up getting a job. Like he pivoted, did the work, put the money in, got a job in Toronto. Eventually pivoted to Mecca, started learning Arabic. Like he checked a lot of milestones in life. That just from putting himself out there and taking the risk. So when people are stuck, maybe you're talking about somebody who is like 58 years old and his career is dying, but I don't believe he's stuck either.
No, I'm saying maybe 30s, 40s, and you're seeing
30s, 40s, he has a lot of opportunity.
But like the thing that happens is that this is a psychological phenomenon that happens, that people one of the worst risks that people can be at is financial risk.
Yeah.
And so what happens to people with financial risk is that they found that they are less capable of healing from trauma. So things like even if you have anxiety and you're just worried or whatever it is that's going on, you're less capable of dealing with that psychological, that anxiety, depression, sadness. It compounds. And you're crippled, almost frozen, like a deer in headlights. You're frozen by the fact that no financial safety.
It's like, I can't take it. What if I take a risk? It doesn't pan out. And I'm down 10 grand.
And you're at that stage, maybe in your late 30s, early 40s. You definitely have for the average Muslim, average person, you have a family, you have mortgage, maybe you have let me not say mortgage. Non-dabiha. What's it called? You have paying off a house. You're doing.
It makes complete sense. You can't really focus on your mental
health
at all,
right?
If you can't even feed yourself or pay your bills.
But even just biologically, you're not capable. Your body's not able.
Well, this is where people like us, hopefully, inshallah, play a role where. Somebody hearing this conversation now is like gets the motivation to research. We're not telling him like shut it all off now and go take a risk, because I mean even in the examples of people, there's no jobs that are disappearing tomorrow. No such thing. That's not how things work. It takes a decade or 2 or 3. Even the jobs that are highest at risk, which if you go on Google,
there's patterns and signs.
There's patterns and signs that are already out there. The writing is already on the wall. For example, for truck drivers, Walmart has invested millions and they're prototyping in the street trucks, Walmart trucks that are fully automated, self-driving. Tesla as well, others, right? So they have fully automated delivery for Domino's and whatever, right, in certain states. So the point being is like the writing is already on the wall. Your job is on the way out. I don't expect it to go anywhere. Allah Alam, I mean, who knows the numbers? I'm sure if you're in that field, it's your job now to go and research. Like, this affects me.
100%.
I'm gonna research every day. I'm gonna put in an hour a day until number one, how much time do I got left? Number two, how do I make sure as these jobs don't disappear overnight? All right, every truck driver in the world, you go to sleep. No, it's gonna be like 100,000 jobs were cut this year. Next year, as more self-automated trucks go on, another 200K get dropped, then 300K. How do I make sure in the meantime, if I don't want to pivot so quickly, how do I make sure my skill set raises me to the top, that I'm in the last group of people to be kicked off? So I can have longer period of time to be earning while I build my next skill set. Also, then you look for government. I mean, I remember reading, this is a topic for another time, but one of the biggest jobs in terms of amount of workers in the world is drivers. Truck drivers, taxi drivers, bus drivers, school bus drivers, etc., right? Delivery drivers. So the governments have a huge concern about these people's jobs being replaced, because that's going to be civil war. That's going to be revolutionary, because where on earth are these people going to get food on the table? They're not going to go quietly, and they shouldn't. They're going to be like, well, now what? Now there's no way you can replace these. In the US alone, and truck drivers alone is 3.5 million truck drivers. This is not counting taxis, Uber, bus drivers, blah, blah, all those. US alone, you have 3.5 million truck drivers. Tell me that gets replaced. It's definitely not gonna happen overnight, but the government still needs to have a solution. Like every generation, when things got more and more automated, the Industrial Revolution, etc., there's been less jobs in the older fields. Like instead of needing 10 people to do the one thing, you need the one person now.
I wanted to shift the conversation then to, since you were talking about all these different jobs, clearly what we need is, especially as, we could say Muslims, we're a Muslim community, a Muslim minority community in the United States. What we need is a diversification of the career paths that our youth and our community members take. Not everyone is a lawyer, engineer, a doctor. No, we need to have politicians who represent us. We need to have, film directors. We mentioned the film directors before. You see how Muslims all across the world, wherever they are, the propaganda paints them and illustrates them as they wish. Movie directors. What if you're gonna, direct movies with obviously following the Islamic guidelines and things like that? Why not?
So here's the thing: is that I'm on the same page as you, but you just mentioned the two examples you mentioned are very high minefield. Yeah, high risk. They're minefield, like politician and movie director or actor or so on and so forth. Those are definitely fields. I think today, okay, I'll say this, is that in our day and age, 2022, in New York City or wherever you are in the Western world, I can speak for. I can't speak for the Eastern world or elsewhere. But anyway, you have much more of an ability today to be a film director or to develop that skill set more so than any time in history, and especially like, you know, one generation ago, two generations ago. You can be a solid film director and like develop all the skills strictly online and without having to cross as many boundaries, haram boundaries, as you would have had to one generation ago. Do you guys agree? You could get your foot in the door, you can make a award-winning production and put it up on YouTube or Vimeo or one of those places and really get the attention and get yourself up
These
there.
industries specifically, they're built on people's traction and attraction to whatever it is you're putting out.
Well, the thing, that's what I'm saying. In our day and age with YouTube and this world,
Right.
you can reach the audience directly. And first off, you can build the skill set so you don't have shoddy work and bad editing and bad lighting. Like you could learn all those skills
Yeah.
to a professional level, like to a genuine level, all of it online. I mean, the average person, the person who will take that path is very unlikely, but it's now more available than ever. So
Absolutely, and I think, yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that this is risky, but I'd say it's actually the exact opposite because sort of in my research what I've seen is there is in fact an existing demand and a growing demand on both ends. I'm seeing billion-dollar company entrepreneurs that are, like I heard this specifically from Kevin O'Leary. He's saying what he's finding more and more as he moves into the time, like into the future in time, is that he's looking for somebody to fill a role that is, in his words, capable of doing storytelling, right? So obviously, given our digital world, we're a very visual generation, let's say, right? And we want people that are not only good storytellers in words, but are also very good at bringing these sort of ideas and words to life and animation and visuals and whatnot. And so, as you mentioned, film director is one of them. I'd go as far as saying graphic designers, anybody in art, believe it or not, because, you know, people
the visual
for the longest time ever would say the worst degree you can get is an art degree.
Yep.
Don't quote me on this and go get an art degree. But I think this is definitely one of the better times to, if you'd like to, get an art degree and expect that you can get a job, like have an easier time at least getting a job today with it or finding a greater demand than, let's say, 30 to 40 years ago.
Well, I want to pay it, like, I just say on this note, because this is, Michelle, is something you're interested in, not necessarily art specifically, but the storytelling world, the, you know, audio visual and marketing.
I mean,
and
YouTube itself, like we're sitting here recording a podcast we're going to put on YouTube,
Right.
and there are people making entire careers on YouTube, making tens of millions of dollars. Like even if you told somebody that 15 years ago, you could make videos, post them on the internet, and make X amount of money, they'd be like, "What kind of witchcraft are you talking about?"
Yeah, they would find it.
But I'm saying the art has to be paired with a tech, a knack for tech.
Yeah, you have to have some skills. Yeah. But to be fair, no, I mean, like, yes, I think for the most part, I think the idea of the top 0.0001, I think that I remember reading there was like over 50 million YouTube pages and like X number of them are actually make any money at all. It was a tiny percentage. So obviously,
Basically us,
hopefully. But like, if you have something to offer, it's like if you have a good story to tell, or it's usually not enough. Like you have to have some good visuals. You have to like constantly innovating. But the good news is that it's not a secret. It's all out there. The people who are successful, you could look at their video and say what's working, what's not. So if somebody's dedicated enough, they'll get there. But we don't want to give the false hope that, hey guys, in that case, go be a YouTuber. Like that's like the 13, 14-year-olds. They're all like, I want to be a YouTuber, and they go through that phase for a few years, and hopefully they get out of it the other end.
I could actually counter this point, and I'd like to say that for as much as there's a growing demand and you think that people have to teach themselves, there is also many growing opportunities to directly teach you. Not per se through like YouTube videos, but there are literally online universities for filmmaking, art, so on and so forth. There's simple services like, for example, Skillshare, which is the sponsor of today's video.
So then take that part out, dude. Giving them a free shout out.
This is the definition of corporate fraud.
But
no, wait.
There's definitely like
fraud. They owe us now.
Yeah,
we give them free advertising. Anyway,
that was a Uno reverse. That was crazy.
I'll just blur it out real quick. But so as much as there's also a demand, and let's say people are interested in seeing these kinds of things, there's also people that are seeing this demand, and then at the same time filling the role of providing an education for it. So you could literally take an online course that is as professional as, let's say, a university course.
And you paid 1/10 of the price.
100%.
Yeah, Skillshare, etc. These websites are awesome, and that's on that. Like, I want to just bring it back to what you had said. Like, hey, maybe someone will go out and get an art degree, and it's a lot more useful, or they can pivot something useful. I would argue that even in that regard, I mean, we do come from a Middle Eastern, immigrant background where that's like unheard of. That's something like absolutely not.
Looked down upon.
Yeah, where you could do both. You can, for example, you can be in a career like pursuing, whatever it is that you're pursuing that's more technical, that's more has a higher level of job security or so on. Meanwhile, you have plenty of time usually for the most part, plenty of time to be building your art or your storytelling or your video and editing and whatever skill set. And that's part of what we said, or what I wanted to get to, is that part of being future-proof, inshallah, with Allah's permission, is having a diverse set of skills. Not like random things that don't match up, but like, well, what's required in the future? I remember reading something, and I don't recall all the details. I wasn't as invested in reading it, but it was about that in the future, coding will be taught to kids in elementary school. I think it's already, they've started.
Yeah.
So likely speaking, that the fact that, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, a kid who was like, I don't know how to use computers, that was pretty standard. Now it's like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as a kid growing up now, 21st century America, who doesn't know how computers. So they were saying, like, what if it goes further?
What your quote reminded me of is a jack of all trades is a master of none. People don't know there's always a continuation to this, right? But oftentimes better than a master of one. Right, so subhanAllah, like this is exactly what we're even taught as Muslims.
Yeah.
It's better to be a jack of all trades. People use that term to be someone who's just unfocused. Jack of all trades, master of none. You're never gonna master anything. But that quote essentially was being used to say that a jack of all trades is actually a good
positive thing.
It's a good positive thing. So especially like in this era, you should be looking to have.
You gotta have that curiosity. Like, and that's what I see over and over, and I keep bringing back this point because in my line of work, I see it all the time. Is that people get complacent, and they haven't read a book in 10 years, and they're making good money, but they're assuming it's like he's only 30 or 35. You should be growing and learning. Your resume hasn't changed in 7 years. That's insane. Like, you're completely complacent, and you're the quickest person that they're gonna replace because there's nothing new about you. Last entry on your resume was it's all algorithms, right? When they're starting to kick people off, obviously how well you work, etc. But they let the computer decide half of it. Old out with the old, in with the new. So
why keep a 35-year-old who makes 400K a year when I can kick him out?
That's a solid number. I'm talking about 80K. You jumped pretty high.
150K. Let's say 150, right? You're making good surplus of money come in, but kick him out. Bring in a 20-year-old who's been coding since he was.
There's no loyalty. Those corporations don't have loyalty to you. Like, so if you have, you mentioned now that kid's been coding since 4. He's up and coming. He's hungry to learn.
Exactly. He's also even going to settle for less money because he just started.
Mm-hmm.
He'll settle for 80, 90K for his first job.
And so how that's a cycle.
It's a cycle. Well, you, in order not to get recycled, in order not to get thrown away,
you got to be the one doing the firing.
Get there. Why not? Like, if you're not building yourself, if you're not, what's the expression? If you're not climbing, if you're not swimming, you're sinking. Something like that, right? Basically, if you're not going up, you're going down. It's that simple. There's no neutral. And I'm not saying like, hey, go be a hustler, wake up at 4 a.m. every day when you don't need to. It's like, well, wake up at 4 for Salah, right? But besides that,
there's other podcasts for that.
The hustlers and this stuff. We're gonna get there eventually. Like, hey, you taking cold showers at 3 a.m.? I took 3 this morning. So it's
You're not meditating enough.
You're not meditating. There you go. I'm meditating right now as we're speaking. So it's just a matter of, I don't like to see the complacency. I'm prone to falling into it myself, and I hate it. And I think it's really indicative of our. I think it is a problem that exists within our ummah and our sort of like zero risk tolerance mentalities, because when you don't take stepping out, spending some money on a course, taking time away from your usuals, that's a risk, and that's like anxiety, and like changes fear, changes risk, right? We got to change that mentality, and that's how you grow. You get out of that bubble, and especially for the next generation.
It's a culture. But I wanted to go back to actually something you said, because I've been thinking about it this whole time. But when we were talking about branching out different careers, and we mentioned politician, we mentioned
minefield number 1.
Yeah, minefield number 1, minefield number 2, like film and theater and things like that. But I find today that medicine, pharmaceuticals, being corporate megalodon, hedge fund, all these areas, also these are minefields. And like what we consider to be zero risk tolerance, you're doing it. Yes, you could be a doctor, for example, overseas, and you have the moral ethical code of a Muslim country. But here in the West,
that's another concept.
It's a completely different conversation.
There's a lot of ethical.
But since we mentioned
problems
the minefield,
there too.
Since we mentioned the minefield, we need to realize that also being a doctor, there are minefields there, and so is engineering. So is like, when is it okay for me to?
It's a good point.
To sit down.
Who draws the line?
Right. For some people, for example, who work from home, let's say they're saying, I only put in 2 hours of work and I get paid like someone who works a 12-hour shift. Okay, well, that's not halal. You're not working.
Cheating.
Yeah, you're cheating. You're proud of yourself, but you're cheating the system, right? You're being paid to do a job. You, as a Muslim, you have to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's like other minefields in those areas as well. That wouldn't stop me from at this point. What I think we need to be, what we need to be talking about is that how can we support the people going into these areas and trying to help them and keep them keep the Islamic sort of vision
And keep them grounded.
Yeah, keep
That's something that I fully
that's
agree.
that's a whole
It's a whole other topic, and it's definitely. I mean, you gave those two as examples,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's a whole host. Like even now talking about. Well, to clarify even further, let's go to the strategies, because we kept avoiding that topic, or we didn't get there yet.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add on this point. I think in general, you can expect the risk from any industry that you get into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if you're working for your own father, who is going to guarantee you employment all the time, you could still expect that. Okay, well, even that entire ship can sink altogether. But there's definitely just safer options than others. Really.
But we were talking about minefield. I guess it's time to clarify. We're talking about ethical minefield or Islamic minefield. So and I know that's what you meant too. Like even in the medical world, in every world, there's going to be an ethical. If you become a sheikh, there's an ethical minefield, because you're going to have decisions where you have to be ethical about, and it's going to be at cost to you or to your organization or to the board or whatever.
For example, you have to put your organization ahead of your self needs, or sometimes,
or even more than that.
Put the ummah or put your community ahead of yourself.
Or your organization is asking you to do something unethical or sign off on something not okay. That's an ethical concern, and that's integrity first, and it's going to cause you to lose your job. That happens all the time. So every field, I agree with you. Every field is going to have. I mean, that's part of the test of life. Is that Allah's testing you, that every single person, from the person who doesn't have a job to the person who has a job that's considered this or that or whatever spectrum it is, you're going to have decisions to make where you're expected and obligated by God to make the honorable decision, and it's sometimes going to come cost at you. Allah says in the Quran, right? وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Even if it's against yourself, you got to side with the truth, and that's your test. Otherwise, you're just chilling, right? No, you're not being tested. So, however, I would argue, and I think let's pivot from this because it's definitely its own topic. The two examples you brought, as much as I agree, we need them. They are ethical concerns. Their ethical concerns are so glaring, and the precipice from which you'll fall off your Islamic path is so much more clear. Politicians are known to be slime in general, right? Frankly
Snake oil salesman.
Yeah, snake oil. It's like you have to develop that. Like even if you come in going with a good heart, in order to succeed in that field, for the most part, there's exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, you have to develop the skill set of becoming a slime ball.
Yeah.
Like that, you have to hone it and work on it and rehearse it. So it depends. I mean, do we need people to lead?
That's an excellent point.
So anyway, yeah. So yeah.
That's why I brought it up. I wanted to hear.
It's important. It's a conversation. It's a lot of conversations.
It's definitely one we should have.
Yeah, I mean, like I can ask you a simple question: is would you want your child? Would you encourage him to be a politician or her? It's
definitely not a black and white situation. I think you could say that you could deal with this on a case-by-case scenario, because I mean, this is actually something I wanted to get into in terms of diversifying your jobs. I would go as far as not saying you only diversifying into the jobs that we're familiar with in our modern day world, but there's also, I've learned this recently actually, there's so many other hidden industries out there that we don't even know about.
Yes.
Like you have Elon Musk, the billionaire that you know, and then you have people in like, freaking the fishing industry. Yeah. That's a billionaire you don't even know existed. Or the guy that does waste management, or the guy that does steel, or the guy that does welding in the middle of the Atlantic. These are all so many different industries that exist out there, and they're making money, and they're huge, and there's actually a demand for them.
Some are up and coming.
Just reminded me, right? Like there's these lists of millionaires, and they're like, these are guys. Check out the top 10 billionaires.
Like there's the guys that you know, and then there's the guys that like actually trillionaires.
Some guy in Mexico who's I'm like, wait, what? Who's he? Like,
that's a good point.
That's an excellent point.
Like you mentioned like fishermen or whatever. There's
Did you know that you could catch a fish in the Atlantic and go sell it for like $20,000 to some restaurant?
That's crazy.
I'm sorry, boys. I gotta stop the pod. I'm going fishing. I'm heading the seas.
I learned this recently. It's like I think like the average tuna, because technically this is illegal, right? So the way that it works, the usual routine is you have to go to like an official fisher's market. That's where restaurants buy their fish. However, on the side, you have these private fishers that go out in the Atlantic on like 1 to 2 week journeys by themselves. They catch a big tuna and they come back at the shore. There's people always waiting for them that will bet on the fish to take it. One guy will bet you 10,000, 20,000,
They bid on
30,000,
Yo,
and that's
yeah.
always going to be cheaper.
Where do you do your research, man? You know too much about the fishing.
Aside from that, even we can get into, like, for example, another one that I just spoke about recently with somebody from my jiu-jitsu training. He does cargo, right? So those big cargo containers that come overseas, apparently those run the world.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
like if you sit there and you give it a moment, you realize, okay, yeah, like pretty much everything and even anything you could look at in this room probably came from overseas,
Yes.
right? But there's literally millions of people all over the world that
Speaking
are spending
of
their
which-
lives doing this kind of stuff.
I
This is
don't-
an industry we don't even know about.
I was gonna interrupt for a silly joke. I'm sorry. I was about to say we should bring jobs back to America. Vote for me. That's it. Now we're back. Now we're
Louis
back.
and Kanye 2024, guys.
Yes, he'll be vice president.
He'll be vice president.
Yeah. I mean, like, come on. It's only fair.
Do we have to redo the bay'ah after that? Or?
Probably yes.
Okay.
We get every 4 years at that point. Yes. I'm sorry, man. You had a good point.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You gotta do it.
So in terms of like industries like this, I mean, I know I personally have some friends that have gone into this stuff, and those are great examples for me. But like this to me, I guess, is kind of like a surprise to you guys. So what do you guys think on these industries?
Well, I have two things to mention on that. The first one is I used to work for my friend who, when we were living in Saudi, he used to have a company exporting cars from the U.S. to Saudi. It was a very small niche. I think it supports your point. People with an entrepreneur mind, they will find these niches, and it's only a matter of look for them. Like it's not as hard as people think it is. It just means are you willing? Are you dedicated enough to do the research and then find your niche and then give it a risk? So he used to do a risk with, it was only American branded cars, so Ford, GMC, and whatever. Like everything else, there's no way you're making a penny.
Because you don't get those out there.
Yeah, well, no, you get them, but it was the only market where it was cheaper here than there was American cars, Fords, and whatever. And it was only bigger cars. So you had the 8-seaters and the 7-seaters, right? You had the GMC Suburban and this and that, Chevy Suburban, right? Whatever, and the GMCs so.
Because the cars you drive here, you really can't drive in all these.
You can, but it's just there's no margin. There's no profit margin whatsoever.
And they're not as effective as, for example, I don't know.
On the desert and those big cars, and they all have big families. So there was he just happened to find a niche, and it's not like he was some genius. He just did some of his homework. He's an entrepreneur mind. So I mean, Michelle is a great guy. I don't want to call him not a genius in case he's listening. But he was very smart and very Michelle, a very wise person. He just went out and took a few risks, and it panned out. So he kept it going. So my point is that you brought that point. It was about it was just a story anecdote about the cargo situation. So we got really familiar with cargo ships and how much it costs to ship a car to from New York to Jeddah or whatever port we were buying from, Delaware and so on. So it's about 3 weeks journey from and in both directions from New York to Jeddah, and you send a car. At that time it was like $1,200 to send a car at a time, and very often it was a lot more. Not very often. Every time it was much more expensive to send in that direction than on the way back. Half of the containers would come back empty because there's not a lot of exports coming out of Jeddah coming to New York. So you can actually do this. You can go to obviously assuming all your paperwork is fine, you passport, blah blah. You can book a seat on a cargo ship, and it's more expensive than a flight, and it's not an enjoyable trip. It's 3 weeks or whatever.
Why?
Some people like adventure. There's YouTubers online who took it just to make a video out of it, and it's boring as you expect. I mean, they have a gym on board. They have really bad internet.
Oh, you're talking about Yes Theory, right?
Oh, yes, Theory did one. Yeah. So I remember one time when we were sending a car, I considered it. I was like, just for the adventure, 3 weeks on the ocean. Imagine that. Have you never thought of going onto the ocean?
No, I usually search up these 50-foot waves and 120-foot waves videos. So I'm like, no.
That's true. Those cargo ships.
Isn't there a hadith that we should avoid the sea if possible? Or
perhaps I'm missing it, but that's interesting.
That's not. Don't listen to me.
I mean, hey, maybe let's look it up. Maybe I'm not familiar with it.
But I want what you guys are saying is especially the tactic you mentioned that. Something I feel people don't realize is that also sort of a perk of being Muslim is that you have insight into what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards in terms of rizq, right? In terms of blessing, whatever it is.
Provisions and
wealth. And things like that. So I wanted to touch on, or maybe even tell maybe a story that talks about
what that looks like. Even as I'm pursuing these foolproof jobs, these small little niches and tactics, and looking on how to best provide for myself and my family, and try to just again be a successful individual in terms of my career.
Absolutely.
What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and what are some secrets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the Prophet ﷺ gives us in regards to these in regards to provision and risk?
Are you asking, or you're about to say a story?
I can mention one or two things,
Yeah,
but
go
I would
for it.
rather you kick it off.
I thought you had a story.
Yeah.
No, I thought you were leading somewhere.
Didn't you study in Mecca?
I did, but we skipped. We skipped this chapter.
So you guys study. You want some graduate of Qura, or you want a graduate of Bozo Hustler University? Like,
Oh,
Yeah.
Don't call it a bozo hustle university. I personally pay $500 a week.
I'd like to personally
to be a
apologize
hustler.
to Andrew Tate.
Oh, come on. You have to bring him up. That's two podcasts.
Second
in a row.
podcast in a row.
I was waiting for you guys, for somebody to not pop the bubble. I was sitting here thinking about it. I was like, please, let's not mention him on the second
We did
podcast.
good. We did
We
real
popped
good.
the bubble. We were into like what, 40?
I saw it in your eyes, and you were saying, say it.
We knew
But I
it was unsaid.
It had to.
We both knew, and you could have left it there.
You could.
They didn't
you
know.
could, like, bleep, like when his name comes up.
I would have been so proud of us if we didn't do it.
I'm so proud of us. We kept the streak.
Yeah.
It's a good streak. What is it? 45 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a solid streak. That's a solid streak. So,
Guys, we're renaming the podcast to the Andrew Tate podcast.
Andrew Tate conversation. Listen, it'll get us a few views.
Look who came up on our podcast.
But make sure you have those
The googly eyes.
The
Like,
googly eyes. It's like you won't believe.
You won't believe
Oh
it.
my god. All right. So let's talk about this. Well, do you have a story you want to share? I don't mind you starting.
I think the closest thing that or the story that I always love is Nuh alayhi salam, and how it alludes to risk. So Nuh alayhi salam is obviously struggling with his people. He's going back and forth. No matter what he does to call them to Islam, they're not listening to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the Quran just very poetically in Surah Nuh discusses. He says. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. And then he's saying, basically, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. So basically, when someone says astaghfirullah, what is the sort of the result of that? What is the end result of that? يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا. He opens the heavens and brings down rain, and he gives you children, and he gives you wealth, and so he starts listing out all these things that humans need, and is considered wealth, and is considered something of beauty.
Yeah.
But it all gets unlocked.
That's what we seek.
Yeah, it all gets unlocked basically by just saying astaghfirullah. So I love like the Quran. Obviously, we can go into how very poetic it is, but like that story specifically, just him going back and forth, and that conversation with his people, and you're able to derive this element of provision. But just if I'm someone who's consistently doing dhikr and saying astaghfirullah, Allah opens doors of risk.
Yeah. It's one. I mean, on that note, obviously, Allah's not saying here in the Quran that in those ayat that. By simply saying istighfar, you're gonna become wealthy. Obviously, that's not the correlation. But is what you're saying is like he's reminding them, hey guys, here's an entire segment of seeking provisions that you've completely ignored,
Yes.
and you're turning your back on. You're obsessed with the wealth, going out and hustling. You're obsessed with someone, and we got to remind ourselves too, like in this hustle mentality or this sort of work hard mentality, which is a good mentality. You might be like doing 9 hours, 10 hours, 12, 14 hours a day of just like, I'm a hustler, and then you feel good about yourself, like I'm a go-getter, but you completely ignore, you don't catch your prayers, for example. You've closed the biggest door to having a healthy, beautiful, wonderful life full of rizq, provisions from God. And that's why you find you can't sleep well at night. You're always stressed about the next thing. Even though money's coming in, you're still stressed. Things are looking up, but all you could think of is the bad. You're fighting with your parents, and if you're married and kids, you're fighting with your kids now. You're like, hey, nothing's like, I'm always worrying about who's out to get me. People are looking at me at work wrong. I deal with people, and some of them are like, they have a talent for finding the negative in every single situation. And you're like, wow, mashallah, Allah blessed you with so much, but you're your own worst enemy. So like, I think Prophet Nuh alayhi salam is telling his people, look, man, the entire factor that you've ignored, and factor it in, you'll see what's going to happen. And sometimes when you've knocked on every door except for God's, and they're not opening up, he's saying, well, what do you expect? Go knock on that one first.
That's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala push you.
Yeah, subhanAllah. So Jazakallah khair, it's good. I mean, one story that sticks out to me is Al-Hasan al-Basri, radiallahu anhu, rahimahullah, who is one of the students of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So he was a scholar in his own right, of course. And he says, a very famous story, he said, if you were to take a a rickety boat out into the ocean, and in order to like escape from, well, the wording he used is to escape from your rizq, from your provisions that God has written for you, you wouldn't, and obviously what's your expectation? Someone takes a rickety boat out into the ocean, he's gonna probably die, he's over. He said you still will not die until every last raindrop that was meant to fall into your mouth will fall. Like until you get not just every dollar that goes into your pocket. If you were destined to drink one more drop of water, you ain't dying until you get it. So like the concept of I'm fully convinced that everything that's headed my way is coming towards me. I'm not gonna stress and lose sleep, obviously to an extreme. You should be.
There's a balance.
There's a balance. It's like the balance of like God has my back, and I'm not gonna obsess over things and become anxious and lose sleep and so on. But I'm also gonna put in the work. And
I don't know if this is nice. And sorry to cut you off, but it's like control what you can and don't worry about what you cannot control.
Yes.
Like that's the part. Yeah, exactly. The part where you can't control, that's where you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy and to bring it. But the part that you can control, you
because there's so much that you can't control.
Exactly.
And the arrogance and the entitlement is when you get so comfortable in what you have, like Fir'aun did, that you assume I'll control it all. Or who's gonna dare change things for me? Like, or let's say you're rich. Let's say you got $50 million in the bank and you have 10 homes and you have a bunch of you have every security measure you can to really make sure that you're gonna be good until you die. The second you start thinking like there's nothing that could possibly happen to me, I've secured every avenue. Like if one thing goes wrong, another thing is gonna go right. Best doctors in the world, blah blah. That's the first sign, or that's one of the most important signs that your destruction is near. That kind of arrogance and entitlement and complacency is like, okay, you're challenging God at this point. Who can harm me? What is it? Man ashaddu minna quwwa. Allah says in the Quran, who is stronger than us? Who can handle this? It's like, all right, I'll show you who can handle this.
Well, Allah's the one who's literally like blinding them, because like, can you blame like someone like Pharaoh if you're
I can.
if you're a kid?
I do, in fact. Come on.
Okay, that's an excellent point.
This guy's defending Pharaoh, Fir'aun, brother. What is that?
Hear me out. Don't get me.
Unbelievable.
We're on the same team.
I know, but
I'm on the same podcast.
If I go down, this whole shit comes down.
Listen, man, it is what it is. Can you blame Pharaoh? Come on. What kind of soundbite is that?
Dunyawi, from a very sort of materialistic perspective. You are a king and you're the most powerful king of your time, and you have an army behind you, and you have these people who you look at degrade, the Israelites, right? You have them cornered between the sea and that army. You're like, who? What can happen? What can happen, right? There's no way nothing can impact or affect me.
But that's exactly the point. It's like, even in that moment when he thought the impossible couldn't happen because it's impossible, guess what? It happened.
Exactly.
And so that was, I guess, the ultimate lesson for him, but then also for the rest of humanity after that you can't set your expectations on anything.
Exactly.
And you can't be arrogant. Like at any point, humbleness. So there's arrogance ingrained in each of us, in our nature, but there's also humbleness, the desire to be humble and the willingness to wonder, right? And so it depends which of those that you grow and which of those get nurtured as you get an adult. Fir'aun had many opportunities. In fact, at the very end there, when he cornered them between the ocean, he got to observe, like, up as the army is closing in on him, he could be like, they're dead meat, I'm killing them all. But then he sees the ocean split in front of his own eyes. Instead of him going, oh my God, they have access to a power that I could have never got the ocean to split. I could, use a bucket, trying to empty it. It'll take me, the rest of my existence.
That's not even something to think of. Like,
he saw the ocean split, and he didn't say like, all right.
He still decided to
time to be humble. He's like, I'll show them. I'll still get it. And that leads me to a point. Actually, I was writing a post about it. I don't know if I'll finish it later, but it was about the idea of when you reach a certain point of success, it blinds you.
So I feel like up to that point where you're literally drowning, or you're, you choose to be blind in the sense that you choose the people. You literally up to that point have chosen the people around you, like the same way that Pharaoh did, right? You chose all the elements, you made all the choices that led you down the path that brought you to this moment where you need someone to basically sort of direct your path. But
also, from our experiences in life and from Allah's promise in the Quran and from stories like Fir'aun, is that Allah never ever lets you go down that path without giving you 50 chances. If Fir'aun had all those signs from Musa, right? Tis'a ayat, nine wonders, nine miracles. That's besides the people telling him, or his own conscience telling him, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? So just like we get pulled out, I remember one time and someone asked me who was having doubts about their faith, how do we know that God gave these? You said that God gave these people many chances. How do you know that? I told him, in your life, does God give you a lot of chances? Yeah, all the time. Like, well, how do you? I can attest to that. Can you?
Absolutely.
Can you? Like, we're small games. Like, we're small time. We don't make big money like Firaun. So like, if the small fish are getting a million chances, how about the big fish who have big stakes? Allah gives a lot of people chances, and we're certain of that, or gives everybody a lot of chances. So if somebody has gotten that far into tughyan and kibr, arrogance and transgression, Allah has given them more chances than you can count.
Allah save us from that.
Ameen.
Yeah, Sheikh. So let's actually get back into some of the strategies you were talking about for future-proof careers.
Yeah, sure. So inshallah, I guess we'll wrap up with this because this ties in our conversation. So I had said there's 3 strategies that from the research, I really settled on these 3. Again, if you go online, you'll find lists. So that's your job, right? Whoever's listening, whether you're a student who wants to know where to pivot, or you are a student who wants to know where to start, or someone in a career wants to know where to pivot, or a parent worrying about their kids, whatever. It's your job to research in your field and find the specific categories. However, I'll give you 3 strategies. The first one is go with the tech. Second one is keep it simple. And the third one is creativity and human interaction. So brief description of each of them. Number 1, going with the tech is self-explanatory. If technology is kicking out older jobs, go with the tech. The AI and the metaverse and solar panels and renewable energy, they all need technicians, engineers, and a million different jobs that are going to be
pretty much anything analog is you can expect it to go out the window.
Sure. So like if you're developing skills to go where the tech, coding, right? Cybersecurity, it's a big boom. If you go with the tech, your job is, that jobs in that field, in those fields are growing. There's demand is growing. Metaverse, or what are you saying? Meta, Facebook, invested billions and billions. So yeah, first strategy, go with the tech. If your job is about to be overrun by tech, don't get panicky, don't get anxious. It's okay to be a little bit worried, but hey, do some research and be like, oh cool, I can, my current skill set can be used as a basic foundation for this up and coming, within 3, 4, 5 years, you've pivoted. Number 2, another strategy going in a different direction altogether is keeping it simple. There will always be a need for a plumber. There will always be a need for the most part, right? Or at the very least for the foreseeable future, for HVAC technician. In fact, technician jobs have gone up on the rise, and they've, as far as I can remember, as far back, right? And the route to get the training in it is shorter than a college degree and way cheaper, right? And you work with your hands, and some people are just a lot more hands-on. They don't like the books and the studies. So woodworking, metalworking, electrician, all these kind of things. And as a bonus, like a lot of times the city offers either incentivizing this or sometimes free beginner studies. Sometimes they fund the whole thing. There's a lot of untapped resources to start a career in this field. Keeping it simple, right? And then finally, category number 3, or strategy number 3, is creativity and human interaction, which is part of what you said. Politician, nobody's going to vote for a robot, or as I was saying, I was like, I'd probably vote for a robot as opposed to these slimy yeah, these slimy humans. Like, would they have to code a robot to be slimy to be a good politician? Like, it would be in this code, like, don't have integrity.
I've seen sci-fi movie examples of this. They're just pretty much nihilists.
The robot themselves?
Yeah, there's no consideration for like human emotion or specific cases. Like, for example,
so they're a politician, basically.
Yeah, like in a human court, you know what I mean? A judge could see somebody crying their eyes out or something and have a bit of mercy for them, whereas the robot will be like, yeah, nah, man, you saw that candy bar, your arm's getting chopped off.
Algorithm, yeah, it's an algorithm. So it's like pure, like 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care if the kid's crying. It means nothing to the robot.
Right.
So it's really interesting.
I think this puts me in like an existential sort of crisis. So I'm gonna stay out of this.
At what point?
On his plate.
Yeah.
At what point are robots conscious, self-conscious?
Well, hey, I mean, our boy Mark Zuckerberg with AI, we might see an example of that soon.
Listen, man, I just wanted to learn some foolproof jobs. I gotta think about
there you go. You got man. The robot's got in your
You got me, bro.
So at what point are robots going to be making this podcast and have us tied up in the storage room? Yeah,
back, right?
Because they already got the technology to, like, what do they call it when they like have AI pretend like we're talking?
I don't know. Wait,
like dialogue or what?
Well, they have like they make a fake video that looks like it's you and has your voice. Has the word deep fakes.
Oh.
Deep fakes.
Okay.
I know it had the word fake in it.
Oh, is that a
It's
robot
already
or AI?
It's AI. It's not a robot. It's just a video.
Yeah.
But the AI, like, this is crazy. It's obviously, like, if you know what to look for, you can tell that's a computer. But it's crazy. So
That thing scares me because like the amount of crimes that opens up. It's like, where does
it's
it
a whole
end?
different world.
Where does it, yeah.
Different world. We'll have to have a conversation on that in the future.
We'll bring on a specialist in AI on the podcast.
We can bring on the AI.
Yeah, or bring on the AI.
The Google's AI or whatever.
Yeah.
So the creativity human interaction is like the nurses, the I guess teachers, and all these factors, the musicians or whatever case may be, or like art or so on, where the chance of a robot, of people accepting a robot, because robots can probably do a better symphony than humans can at this point, and they could probably be better teachers. But would humans accept that? Are they ready to accept that? They're probably ways away from accepting that. That's the argument that's being made. So creativity and human interaction, where human interaction is expected or needed, that seems to be something that it's going to be a while until robots
I have a question.
replace.
In terms of this human
technology.
interaction that you're talking about, would you push it as far as, like, for example, the topic that I brought up earlier about those not so discussed or rather hidden careers? So, like, let's say being a welder on an oil rig in the Atlantic, or being like a marble carver somewhere in Italy, or, you know, fishing, for example. Would you say that these are perhaps careers that people should look into as well, or no?
Well, marble carver in Italy is such a good example compared to those other two, like, that I can think of, because marble carver, they already have robots doing perfection. Like, they could do an exact replica of, you know, the David, you know, the statue of David. But you and I wouldn't. Oh no, I wouldn't buy it regardless. And don't buy statues, brothers and sisters. but in general, you and I would not. Or the average person is not interested in the marble that was carved by robot. Yes or no? Like, the one that was carved by hand, despite it having more imperfections, is going to be 5,000 times the price. Yes or no? Like, hand
Because it's not artificial.
Because now you made it the norm and the standard.
It's just boring.
It's just
So that already, I think, but that has the art factor where that's why people
But
would
is
rather.
this something we can expect to be valued or a sustainable career in the future?
I don't know. I mean, this would be on the people, like a welder. Like, so put it this way: the ocean welder at the bottom of, like, he has to go into freezing seas and get on the bottom of a ship and whatever. He's getting paid a ton of money, but because that part of that is hazard pay, and like he could die and sharks could come eat him and whatever. But like the second the company is able to replace it with a robot, they will, because it's safer and nobody wants to do that job.
and they don't have to pay the robot.
And they don't have to pay the robot as much. They buy it one time fee. However, I don't know how far off are companies from developing a robot that could withstand that kind of and go there, right? Whoever is considering those fields would have to look it up. Now, I don't know. It's a case by case, right? How replaceable is this job? How long is my journey to get there, so I can start earning and be worth my investment of my time? And by the time I get there, is it going to be even more replaceable or not? Is there an art factor like the marble carving, where or a creativity, giving speeches, politicians, you know, teachers, nurses, the human interaction? Who's gonna trust, you know, their loved ones in the hands of a robot? Like, no, I'd rather have a nurse. Even though the nurse is gonna make much more mistakes, there's a human touch and the human element. So
I feel like the questions that are posed are purely thought are from a capitalistic perspective, right? Because at what point is it even healthy for a human to learn from a robot? Like, is it even healthy for you to sit down? Imagine, like, you send your kid to 4th grade. It's like, yo, Baba, I learned, so this robot taught us today. I'd be very concerned. At least I'd want to see some research into what are the effects of that. If I'm learning from someone who is very, just again, tone deaf to emotion.
well, the robot would have to be programmed to have some sort of emotion.
That's still
This is technically the danger behind AI.
yeah.
Like,
Because
when I think of using robots, I think of, like, automating a factory or putting them in dangerous work environments that we wouldn't want people to be in. But in terms of, like, acquiring knowledge or teaching
Human
people,
interaction.
or taking out that component of human compassion or practice, that's where I think you draw a big red line, because not only, like I said, are you bringing to life these sci-fi movies of robots becoming smarter than we are and taking control of everything, but even then, I think on an ethical level, it's immoral, really. We created these toys, I'd like to call them. You know what I mean? I don't think we should ever
Don't
get to
call
a
them
level where
that.
it's...
They're gonna hear this one day.
They can hear it.
they're gonna come for you, bro.
Come on, don't think, hey.
That wasn't me.
I didn't call you toys. I didn't call you toys.
I don't think they should be teaching us, you know what I mean? I'm in the same position as you. I'd be just as concerned if I had a kid that came home telling me, hey, I learned from a robot today.
I, for one, would like my children to learn from robots, just so I'm clear in the future. Because
on PC.
the thing is, they're going to be able to go back and hear like gigabytes worth of footage in seconds.
You're really taking this.
They're going to listen to this. They're going to listen to this. And it's going to be your heads, the both of you.
Might be the innovator of this.
I'm the
the future doctor.
I'm the mole.
Might be a robot.
I'm already on the robots team. Like it's jokes aside, obviously, but it's a real concern. That's where I was saying the category number 3 or strategy number 3 is things that have a human element. That even if robots get to the level, or AI gets to the level, or metaverse gets to the level, the human acceptance is not nearly there, and it might be another generation. Allah, again, none of this stuff is guaranteed.
Is it
speculation.
healthy even for that generation to go through that sort of change? Like
there's a lot of things we do now that's not healthy.
We're technically the first generation to be exposed to social media and the effects of it.
Yeah, we are.
Can you even tell?
No,
it's because the guy next to you is brainwashed just like you to use this device and live with it.
I'll give you an example. The kids growing up now, who are grow up. There was a segment on you could find online. It wasn't like a research thing. There's bits and pieces where children who grow up with Alexa in the household, or what are the other ones? Alexa and
Siri
and those things. Like there was this video that went viral. It was a little girl or a boy talking to Alexa, like thinking that this is a person. It sounds like a woman. And my dad talks to her all the time. My mom talks to her. Hey Alexa, tell me a joke. So she's like talking, like having a conversation, because she doesn't know any better. So she's already been programmed since day one that this is normal. Me and you are like, get that thing out of my house. It could be listened to me. But eventually, my point is, a kid who grows up in that generation, it might not be so weird to them.
No, it's normal. Everyone has that.
No, so they might be like, yeah, teach my kid, a robot teach my kid. Hey, it's better than a sleep deprived guy making 25K who should be making higher. He might be rationalizing it from his head, and this is more humane. Hey, it's a whole conversation to be had. But in the meantime, in terms of our future-proof job conversation, it looks good that a job that has some level of human interaction, a human compassion or expectation of that, is probably not on the chopping block just yet.
Yes.
That's what we can expect, inshallah. So that's your 3 strategies. Go with the tech, keep it simple and hands-on, or pursue something that has human interaction and human compassion. And hey, which one should you choose? Which one speaks to you? Which one is something you're good at? Which one is something that you're already on that path that you can pivot easily, or that you're already there, or so on and so forth? And hey, bitawfiq, inshallah, Allah will. Ultimately our tawakkul is on Allah. We ask Him for protection, and Allah controls the thousands of factors that are out of our hands, and we control the 1 or 2 factors that are in our hands. Allah controls that too, but we play a role in those. So we tie our camels, inshallah, and Allah will bless our future.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.